Howdy folks, and welcome to the Hillbilly Kitchen. Today we're making a chocolate buttercream frosting to go with our Joe's cake. Now this is an absolutely delicious frosting, and it will go with any cake, not just the Joe's cake that we did. But this frosting kind of perfectly pairs with that cake recipe. So if you haven't watched Joe's cake yet, and you're looking for a special cake, maybe for a Christmas dinner or Thanksgiving or a potluck, church dinner, anything like that, birthday, we've already had these cakes for several birthdays. This is a good one. And we're going to make the frosting in this video, and we're also going to stack up a 3-layer cake, which we baked in the Joe's cake video, and kind of show you how to do that without any special tools. But we're going to talk about some of the stuff that you can get, maybe if you want to get into some cake decorating. For this frosting, you need 4 cups of powdered sugar. That's the white confectioner sugar. Don't need to be anything special. You need a cup of unsweetened cocoa. And I have 2 teaspoons of vanilla and 2 teaspoons of instant coffee. Now you don't necessarily have to have the instant coffee, but it really makes the chocolate taste richer. And this is not going to make it taste like mocha. It's just going to make the chocolate taste richer. It's not enough that it's going to give it a coffee flavor. It's just kind of going to amplify the chocolate. And amplified chocolate's always good. And I have a little over half a cup of cream. Now, I'm not going to add this all at once. And if you don't have cream, you can use regular milk to make this. But I like the cream. And of course, my vanilla is from Vanilla Feeds Tomorrow. And this is really good, high quality vanilla. And it's a non-profit. All of the proceeds, not just part of them, go to feed hungry people in East Tennessee, and I'm going to have a link to this in the description. And if you're looking for something maybe to get folks on your Christmas list that cook and you don't know what to get them, this is going to go to everybody on my Christmas list who cooks. They're going to get a jar of vanilla even if they don't get anything else, because it's good vanilla and it'll help them out, and it'll also help out a lot of other folks too. So anyways, now y'all know I don't drag out my stand mixer for much because I don't like cleaning it. But when you're making frosting, you can use a hand mixer and mix it. It tends to sling it out a little bit. If you're using a hand mixer, here's a tip. Set it down in the sink and the sink will catch some of it. And I don't care how careful you are, if you're whipping frosting, that mixer is going to sling it. And I forgot my cup of butter when I was going over the ingredients. You need a cup of soft butter, 2 sticks. So anyway, if you got a stand mixer, use a stand mixer. You can mix this by hand, but you're not going to be able to whip it. And for this cake, I want to whip it a little bit. I want to make it kind of light and fluffy. Go ahead and mix your, or add your cocoa into your mixer. And add your butter in. Now, if you're using a hand mixer, I would kind of mix this up a little bit with a fork or a flat whisk or something like that so that it doesn't sling it so bad. With the stand mixer, I'm going to put the top on it and it'll do it not too bad. I'm going to add my soft butter in here. And this is a buttercream frosting. Obviously, it's going to have butter and cream. I'm going to go ahead and add in my instant coffee. And like I said, you don't necessarily have to put that in there. But you can get instant coffee really cheap. Just get a little can, or you can even get the little packets. I think they sell them like at the Dollar Tree. You'd want to use 2 little packets. And I'm going to go ahead and add in my vanilla. And I'm going to add in about half of my cream. And I'm going to use this to adjust the consistency as it mixes. We might not use it all, might even need a little bit more than the half a cup. We'll just have to see. But you want to keep adding the cream or the milk, whatever you're using, until you get it to a workable consistency, until it'll spread. I'm using every guard I got because I know it's going to slop. Start slow. And we're just going to mix it till it's mixed. Okay, it's been mixing for, I don't know, about a minute. And I want to kind of scrape the sides of my bowl here. And my guard's, of course, going to be all in the way. And I also want to scrape off my whisk attachment on my stand mixer. You do want to use your whisk attachment with this. And if you're using a hand mixer, if it has a whisk attachment on it, it might work, but this is pretty thick. So unless your whisk thing is kind of stiff, you know, pretty stout one, you might have to use your regular beaters on a hand mixer. But the mess that this stand mixer will save when you're whipping up frosting, it's definitely worth the time it takes to clean it. That is still very, very stiff, so I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of my cream. I'm going to need at least what I've got left here. It's not really mixing up good, so I know I'm going to need quite a bit more. And you don't want your butter in this completely melted, just kind of at room temperature. If it's completely melted, you'll never even get it stiff enough to use it to frost a cake with. And then if you put the cake in the refrigerator, well, your frosting's going to be so stiff, nobody's going to be able to bite through it. It'll be like solid. And you don't really want that either. I'm going to try to finish this without the guard, but it did blow up a little powdered sugar and a little cocoa, and that guard kind of helped keep it in the mixer. Okay, as it mixes, kind of keep turning the speed of the mixer up. And every so often, you want to scrape your whisk or your beaters or whatever you're using off a little bit. And you want to scrape the sides of your bowl down. And I'm not really worried about getting all this off here. I just kind of want to get what's on the top down toward the bottom. Don't forget to kind of scrape your spatula off, because you'll have stuff that's not whipped stuck to your spatula. This is still pretty stiff, and I might have to add some more cream, but I'm going to mix it again and see, because I want to kind of at least do a border around the edge of my cake. I mean, I'm not going to decorate it super fancy. But I want to be able to put a border around the edge of it, so I don't want it to get too thin, or I won't be able to do that. I'm going to mix it again and then see what kind of consistency I got. Like I said, that's really, really thick, and I do want to be able to pipe an edge on there, but I also want to be able to spread it. Okay, let's see what kind of consistency we got after that. I think that's probably spreadable there. Yeah, that's spreadable. I'm gonna scrape it and give it one more good whip, because whipping it it changes the texture definitely. And I really kind of think it changes the flavor a little bit too, because it's not so dense. It actually has a lighter taste, and that's kind of what I'm going for. Still rich, still creamy, but it's not heavy tasting. If that makes any sense, putting a little air in it actually does make it taste less heavy. And nobody wants, you know, I don't know, maybe some people do, but I don't want it to just taste like a wad of butter and sugar. I want it to have some flavor to it. All right, up. All right, I'm gonna call that whipped enough. You can literally whip it as long as you want to. It's not gonna hurt it. The more you whip it, of course, the fluffier it gets. But I think this is about good for me. Now, the hardest part about doing it in a stand mixer is getting it out of the whisk without getting it all over the kitchen. And of course, if you do that, then you've made as much work as you've saved. Okay, now we have our 3 cake layers here that we baked yesterday. Now, a real from scratch bakery cake with homemade frosting on it now costs well over $60. I mean, if you get a cheap one, it's $60. An expensive one could be over $100. And if it's decorated, you're looking at even more money. So kind of getting into home baking it's a hobby, it's relaxing, it's something that you can do for special occasions, you know, birthdays, baby showers, things like that, and the holidays. And it's something special that you can do for your family that maybe they can't afford to do for themselves and you can't afford to do for them. But if you do it yourself, you don't have that much in it. Everything in this cake and in the frosting is just basic ingredients, probably well less than $10. So you're talking about 10 cents on the dollar versus buying it and making it. So you can put a little bit of time into it. You don't really need anything super special. You can get a little set of decorating tips. I'd say I bought these here probably 30, 40 years ago. Well, not 40 years ago, probably every bit of 30 years ago though. And I have used them ever since. Now I have some of the big metal sets that have all the different tips on them. But if you just get a basic little 4 or 5 piece set, you can do borders and you can write and you can do little designs and stuff without spending a fortune. Now, Amazon has a link to a cake kit, and it has a leveler in it, it has bags in it, it has parchment in it, and it has a couple of these little things in it that you can actually do a design in your frosting once you put it on. And these are pretty cool. I've only got one of them, and I may get some more because I like to sometimes play with cake decorating, and I don't do anything super special. It's something I enjoy doing. If you want to do wedding cakes or something where you tier them, you'll need a cake leveler, and that's what this is. And you just sit it on the table and slide it through the cake, and it cuts the cake an exact height. I've got mine set up to do a 3-tier 4-inch layer on a tiered cake. And I think it's like at 3/4 of an inch, which gives me room to put frosting in between each layer to hold it together and then set up the tiers. And I've done a couple of wedding cakes. And this is something, if you want to tier your cakes, if you want to do tiered cakes where you put the cake boards in between them, a lot of folks use dowel rods. I do not. I get these lollipop sticks. They are exactly 4 inches, and they won't leave a flavor in your cake like the dowel rods do. You have to be very, very careful if you use dowel rods, and you can get plastic things like these. These are just paper, but the plastic ones, a lot of folks try to reuse them, and you know, that can be a pain. These are so cheap, you can just throw them away. But once you get your layers together, you just put these in, and then you put the next board on top, and it holds it level. You would space them around, maybe do 6 and 1 in the center, and that'll hold your next layer of cake up. But that's how you do those tiered cakes, where you would have like a 10-inch layer, an 8-inch layer, and a 6-inch layer, and you don't have it 3 tiers high. But anyway, that's just some information I'm sharing. Popsicle sticks, lollipop sticks definitely make that job easier. You can get all kinds of these pre-made bags. These are some super cheapy ones. I've had them for a while. I got like 50 of them, and I don't know, they weren't very much at all. But you don't have to have those. You can just use a Ziploc bag or a sandwich bag, or the bread bags that you get, not a used bread bag that wouldn't have a good square corner in it, but you can get they call them bread bags. They're really cheap, and they work good for this. And you just cut the corner out like I did here and put your tip on there. A lot of the sets have this little piece right here, which you put down in the bag, and then you can screw different tips on it. Those are great, and they make those with the metal for the metal tips too, and it's a 3-piece thing. It has the piece inside and then a ring, and you can change out your metal tips so you can use the same color frosting, the same bag, and have a different design. But anyway, that's just some of the stuff you can get. I will try to find links to some of this stuff and put it in the Amazon store, and we've been sharing the link to the Amazon store on the bottom in the description so you can find some of that stuff. That's another good Christmas gift if you have somebody who likes to bake and maybe they can't afford to buy the stuff, you know, get them some of it for Christmas. Anyway, I'm not going to use any special tools really to make this except for these cheap little tips, and that you can get them for just a couple of dollars. And I'm only going to use those for a border. I'm just going to frost my cake the way that my granny used to do it with a butter knife. It works great. I'm just going to put a little frosting. When you are doing a layered cake, you don't have to necessarily have a leveler. But whether it's 2 layers or 3 layers, your first one, turn the top down, which is what I did here. And actually, sometimes on my top layer, I turn the top up and I kind of have it rounded. If you look at the bakery cakes though, they never do that. The top of their cakes are always squared off. Well, you don't have to square it off. I kind of like the round ones, but it's whatever you want. If you want it to look like the bakery cakes and be squared off, turn it down, and that'll give you a nice square top. If you're using a leveler, you still want to use the bottom of your cake, because if you cut it and then you turn that cut part up, then you're going to have a ton of crumbs in your frosting. The bottom you're going to get some, but not like you would off of a cut edge. Okay, now what I want to do is I just want to make sure I have this frosted all the way to the edge and kind of sticking off the edge a little bit. The pans that I used had a taper on them. And if your pans have a taper on them, that's going to leave a little bit of a gap on the edge between your layers. And I'm not crazy about that, but it seems like that's kind of how pans are. And now what you're going to do is you're going to take your next one. And again, if you want that square, place it top down, bottom up. And for this, because I'm not using a leveler, I'm going to have less of a gap between my layers if I do it this way. If you're putting your cake on a plate, and a good cheap idea for a plate to put a cake on, especially if you're going to take it somewhere and give it away or take it to a party where you might not get your plate back, just go to the Dollar Tree and get you an odd plate and put your cake on it. Now, if you have a cake or a plate that has a little bit of a cup to it, turning that bottom layer down will seal up that gap between the plate and your cake, and you don't have to worry about the edges breaking and falling off. Or if you're making it just on one of your kitchen plates at home, like I bought this little thing here at the Dollar Tree. It's just a little plastic crystal cake plate, or it looks like crystal, and it's plastic. Because I'm going to give this cake away. I'm going to take it over to Melinda's. Everybody keeps asking what do I do with all the stuff I bake. Obviously, I'm not eating everything I bake. I did save one of the square ones. It's over there, and I'm going to go ride through the mountains and look at the leaves this weekend, because it's mid-October and the leaves are just absolutely gorgeous, and I'm going to take that with me and have it while I'm traveling through the mountains. Okay, now this top layer, if you want your cake square like bakery cakes, turn it down. If you want it rounded, turn it up, and you just stack it up like that. Now this is taller than a 4-inch layer. If you were doing the cake with the tiers, you would definitely want to use your leveler and keep it down to 4 inches, because when you're doing a tiered cake like that, I'd say this is probably 7 or 8 inches thick. If you do each tier 7 or 8 inches thick, you're going to have a hard time holding that up. So if you're making a wedding cake or a big baby shower cake or something like that, and you want to tier it, keep them at 4 inches. When you put your frosting in a bag, kind of twist up the end. If you don't, when you start squeezing it, it's going to squirt out the back end, and that's just going to make a mess. And it's really kind of a good idea if you got a tie wrapper, just a twist tie to put on it. And of course I don't have. Okay, so now I'm going to scrape the rest of my frosting out of my bowl and put it on the top of my cake here. And I'm going to spread it from the top down the sides. Now, if we were putting a white frosting on a chocolate cake, you'd want to do a crumb layer, which is a thin layer of frosting. And then you put that in the refrigerator and cool it, which firms it up. And then you can put a layer of frosting over your crumb layer, and you don't get crumbs in your outside frosting, and it's really pretty and smooth. But because we're doing chocolate on chocolate, we don't even have to worry about that. Nobody's going to notice if it has a chocolate crumb in it. And if they do, just tell them that's all right. They don't have to eat any. You'll take the leftovers home. Okay, now what I'm going to do, the way I'm going to do this, and you can also get a cake turntable, which makes this easier because you can spin your cake. But like I said, I wanted to do this without any special stuff. But it does make it easier if you have a turntable. You can spin it around easier. You can get it more even. You can do it completely smooth. You know, it just makes life a little bit easier. And they're not that much. You can get those for less than $10 if cake baking and decorating is something that you want to get into. And you can get the fancy cake frosting knives so you can smooth it out. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of start working this down the edge. And I've got way more frosting on the top here than what I want on the top, but that's fine. And you can see I've kind of got some squirting out the sides, and that's fine. Oop. I'm trying to kind of keep this from falling all over my plate. And you can also cut a round of parchment paper and put it down over your cake so that it covers the edge of your plate. And then when you're done, parchment paper or wax paper, you can cut it or tear it and pull it off, and that leaves the edge of your plate really clean. And that's kind of a good idea if you're making it and you know you want it to be really pretty. If it's important, if you're making it for an event and you want it to be pretty, like a baby shower or a wedding or something, the parchment paper on the bottom of the plate will keep the edge of the plate clean, and then you just tear it off. But you can see if I had the turntable under here, it would be easier to turn this, smoother, easier to work with it, but it's all right like this. Certainly you don't have to have it. And you just keep going around until you get the sides all covered and get the top about as thick as you want it. You know, with all the stuff going on, it seems like it's harder and harder not to be afraid. We have the world economists warning us about the world economy, not just America's economy. We have America's financial leaders warning us about our economy. It's mid-October and we have snow today. There's literally snow blowing outside. I mean, I don't think it's going to snow, but we've definitely had some flakes and it's pretty cold. It's really early in the year for it to be this cold. It is very hard not to be afraid, especially considering what we've been through in the past couple of years. I mean, it just seems like it never ends. A lot of folks, I'm afraid, are kind of losing hope, and fear is taking over. 2 Timothy 1:7 says, "For God hath not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of sound mind." So no matter how bad it seems to be getting out there, God has given us the spirit of power. We have power over that fear. And He has given us sound mind. And all we have to do is claim that peace of God. Literally, it's that easy. God gave it to us. Claim it. Don't let the world take it from you. Don't let what the weatherman's saying or what the economists are saying, what they're saying on the nightly news, what politicians are saying. None of that matters, really. I mean, it just doesn't matter. In the long term, it doesn't matter. As far as eternity goes, if you are saved, if you know Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, you have power over all that's going on. God has already overcome the world. Jesus has already won the battle. You are secure. You are a child of God. So don't let the world steal your mind. Don't let events change who you are or take what God has given you. Like I said, I know it's hard. I know the news from the world is not good, but our Savior hasn't changed, and God is greater than all the bad that's going on in the world. All the wars, the rumors of wars, the famines, the natural disasters, all that. God's greater than that, and He has overcome all of it already. So just call on Him. Let His love fill you. Let Him renew your soul. And let Him fill you with His peace. That peace that passes all understanding. And that peace that will allow you to have a sound mind in troubled times. Okay. Cake decorating is actually a good way to kind of take your mind off of all the stuff going on in the world. And you can see there we have our cake covered really well. And back in the day, if my granny or my aunt Dot or somebody was making a cake, this is how it would have been. I mean, they'd have finished it right here. But it seems like, we're kind of getting fancier, and we are talking about ways that you can make it a little bit fancier, like those $100 bakery cakes. So just with a basic star tip, and you can buy just one tip if you want to put the borders on them. My goodness, look at my hands. It's as much fun as gardening. To do the border, all you're going to do, once we get it out here, is we're just going to squeeze it in like little humps all around the cake. And you can do different borders. You can do like little overlapping humps. And mine is stiff here. I think it got cold. It's kind of cool in here this morning. I didn't have on a ton of heat. You can actually just go straight around this with that star tip. You don't have to do little anything cute. But I'm trying. As you squeeze the frosting out, kind of continue to twist your bag up so you don't end up with like a toothpaste tube that's been squeezed from the middle. There it goes. And for those of us who have a little arthritis, this can be tricky, especially on a cold morning, but it's not too bad. If your arthritis is too bad, just make it a little thinner and do just a quick around it with the star tip on it, and it'll look fine. It'll look finished. Nobody will know. And the fact is, there really is no right way to do this. It's kind of an art form. So however you do it, it's the right way. Whether you take something like this and you put a pattern, whether you finish your frosting all smooth, whatever you do, it's your cake. You can do the melted chocolate and pipe it out and put it in the freezer and let it get hard and do, stand-up chocolate pieces on it if you really want to get fancy. That's really simple to do. You just melt chocolate, either just cut a little hole in the edge of the bag or use a straight tip like this, and you just do your design, and you can actually print out a design on your computer and then lay a piece of wax paper over your printed design. You have to do it on wax paper anyway, and trace your printed design with the frosting. There. Now that's got a little border on the bottom. Let's see. Should have done this before I did that border on the bottom. Let's put an edge in this frosting if I can do it without getting my bottom. And this would definitely be better if I had that turntable out here, because I could do it smooth. Because right now what I'm getting is like dips where I stop turning it. But you get the idea. It just kind of puts a little bit of a design in it. Like I said, it would be easier if I had the turntable and I wouldn't have the little dips in it where I've stopped turning it. It's not perfect, but that's all right. Like I said, you get the design or the idea. It just puts a design in the frosting. And you can also do it on the top if you wanted to. Again, it would be easier with that turntable thing. Aw. Well, this is an idea cake, a concept cake. But it does put a pattern in the frosting, and those are kind of cool. Get them, play with them. And the great thing about frosting is if you don't like that, you know, if you do something you don't like, you just take your knife and you smooth it right back out. I mean, it's not unfixable. Even if you pipe a design on it that you don't like, you can take it off. No more swirls with the pattern thing. That simple. You know, no big deal. You can't really mess it up. And like I said, it's kind of an art form, so it's your design. What if we put a swirl up here, kind of like maybe you'd put on top of a cupcake or something. Just to add a little bit to it. And you can get tips that will literally make it looks like a rose. You squeeze it out with one tip. So you don't have to do the roses with the individual petals anymore. And we'll put some little swirls, just little ones around the edge here. Let's see, let's kind of space them. I'm terrible at spacing things and measuring things. To get it exact, if I was going to do this for a special occasion, I would literally have to get out my tape measure. I mean, you can see what I'm talking about. I'd have to get out my tape measure if I was going to do this for a special occasion, because my little dots around the edge are nowhere near even. Some of them, another one will fit between them, and some of them, they're overlapping. But that's okay, and you can do it solid all the way around. There's little dots all the way around. It's just whatever you want. Don't have to do anything like that. But it is something that, you know, pass the time, occupy your mind, maybe take your mind off of some of your troubles, because we do have to keep our mind occupied so that the world doesn't take over it. And there's an old saying that says an idle mind is the devil's workshop, and I think that's probably true. Keep busy during these troubled times. Find something that you enjoy doing, whether it's cake decorating or gardening or just playing with the grandkids, whatever. You don't need a lot of special tools to make a really special looking cake. And even as imperfect as this is, because I didn't measure anything, use this one tip, didn't level anything, that is a very good looking cake, and you could take it to any special occasion. And certainly it tastes good. Tastes way better than something you're going to get in like a grocery store bakery, and probably tastes better than most things you would get in a high-end bakery, those cakes that you're going to pay $60 to $100 or even more for. If you're looking for a hobby, try baking and cake decorating. You don't have to be great at it, and it's still going to turn out good. Folks are still going to enjoy it. I want to thank y'all so much for joining us, the Hillbilly Kitchen. If you haven't already, please don't forget to click like and subscribe before you leave. Share our videos with your friends because it really helps us out. And until next time, remember to put God first.